So I want to thank Maya Lombarts for joining us today. Maya is an expat from Belgium, and she has been living here for several years. And I'm so glad to be speaking with her today. She has a background not just in singing, but also in the non governmental organization world, and is also a health coach. So without further ado, Maya, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for introducing me already. I'm so glad to be speaking to your crowd, people who want to be expats maybe or are thinking of doing what we're doing. And yeah, so from Belgium, I already feel quite Cusqueña. I arrived here in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just to do my internship for 3 months. That was the intention. In the beginning, I was like, what am I gonna do here for 3 months? Yeah, it's so long. But then after 3 months, I felt like, okay, there's more for me here. So I actually had to go back to Belgium to graduate and do everything. But then I bought a one-way ticket back to Peru. And I said, you know what? I just want to stay until I feel like going home. Because I don't feel it now. I feel like there's more for me. I just want to see what happens. So I said, okay, 6 months. Then I found a job and a working visa. I said, okay, 1 year. And I kept extending the time I stay here. And in the end, it was 3 years until I was like, okay, I'm so far away from the family. I really want to just live in Europe. I want to have the good living standards and all the benefits we get there. I tried it, didn't feel happy there, and realized I actually just want to be here. So I came back in the middle of the pandemic now in December 2020, and I'm so happy that it just worked out. I'm back here and here to stay this time.
That's so wonderful. So, in the case of finding a internship, were you interested specifically in South America?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because when I was 14, I started learning Spanish because I said to my mom, after graduating, I'm gonna live in South America. I already had that passion for the culture and I really loved the language. And so when I saw there was an opportunity to go for 3 months through my university, there was the option to go to Mexico or to Cusco in Peru. But in Mexico, it was like to work in a university, a big organization. And here in Cusco, it was an NGO they are teaching single moms to become teachers in Spanish to teach tourists how to speak Spanish. So that's their way of giving them a job, right? And they have a project with kids as well to take care of them. So I was way more interested in really supporting the project here. So I just chose Cusco without giving it a second thought. I knew that Machu Picchu was somewhere here, but I didn't know much more. And yeah, that's how I ended up here.
That's a really beautiful story. I'm a big fan of Mexico, but certainly in some areas of Mexico, you have such a massive population that you do feel perhaps atomized in a way. Perhaps maybe you want to make a specific contribution or a specific type of generous offering to a certain community, and you feel like, wow, it's really a lot of people here. But in Cusco, it's limited to about 500,000 people. And so you do feel like when you are spending time here, you're running into the same people, you're going to the same restaurants, you're interacting with the same people. It's ironic because it's dense, but it still has a small town vibe. And that's really strange, but wonderful coming, at least for me, coming from the US, but also Maya here is coming from Belgium. And of course, Belgium is quite urbanized and there's a lot of surrounding metropolitan areas. So to have this slower pace is, I think, really wonderful. Thank you so much for mentioning your NGO work. I had an intention to become an attorney, so I got my degree in political science and really met a lot of interesting worldly thinkers, people from around the world that encouraged me to think bigger. I don't think I would have traveled abroad without it because actually it was kind of controversial. But the first time I left the United States was to go to Israel for a study abroad, and that kind of opened my mind to the idea that I could live in other countries. So as far as adjusting to living in South America, what were some of the things that perhaps took some adjusting in the initial period? What are some things that new expats, people that are new to living abroad, what are some of those things that you might I don't want to use the word warn, but maybe notify them about?
Yeah, I think the first thing that come to mind is right here in South America. I think it counts for every country here. A plan is never a plan. so, so I come from a very planned culture, right? So if I want to go for dinner with a friend in Belgium, today we're Wednesday, right? So if I want to go for dinner, then it would be next week, Friday, maybe, and we just plan it, put it in our calendar, and it's done. And then when you feel bad that evening, you don't want to cancel because you planned it for so long already. You know, the whole pressure of the
And your
social
time is
life.
valuable,
And
so
yeah, and so they block their time and they're busy as well. So you go and you force yourself and you kind of, what I say as a health coach as well, you live in your schedule instead of your body, right? And that's the problem. But here, in the beginning, my first week, everyone I met was like, oh yeah, on Saturday, let's go to that restaurant, let's go there. And I was like, I have so many plans this weekend. Awesome. And then in the end, that weekend, nothing happened. Because I thought it was already a plan. So, what I learned here is that they're very enthusiastic. They want to do a million things, but it doesn't mean that it's confirmed, that it's planned. They will still see what they feel like. If I ask you right now, it's Wednesday, if I ask you, let's go to somewhere on Saturday, a Peruvian person will be like, well, I don't know what I'm going to feel like on Saturday. So I can't confirm that yet because what's going to happen in my life, I don't know.
who knows
Sure.
about to?
And so if we have a plan on Saturday, they you will need to double confirm. And that's something I want to tell everyone who comes here. You need to learn that double confirm, which means that if we agree on Saturday today, on Saturday the day itself, you call that person again. I will call you again, say, "Hey, we were meeting today, right?" And if they double confirm, then it's going to happen, right?
Okay, that
So
makes a lot of sense. So go through the double
double
confirmation.
confirmation. Also, if you meet someone before you leave your house, call them and say, "Hey, I'm leaving my house. I see you there." Because otherwise, you will end up waiting for someone somewhere and they will not appear, right? So I had to learn those things the hard way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can definitely appreciate that. Sometimes with my lady and making plans, uh, it's like she'll just say, "Okay, you know what? I'll let you know when I get there, and then you can walk over," because sometimes time just doesn't operate the same way as it does.
Time feels so different here.
It feels so much different. Sometimes it goes so much faster, and then other times when you're waiting in line, sometimes it goes slower. But it's definitely takes a different mindset. I'm glad that you kind of pointed that out. That the first thing that you have to consider when you are becoming an expat in Cusco and in other places, that time may not operate in the same way that you're used to, and you really have to, I think, develop a sense of patience for people that. Um, they're operating in a different way than what you're used to.
I'm not a patient. I'm not a patient person, but I patience and flexibility is what I learned here, definitely. But it also helped me a lot in becoming just more present. So it's more like living in the moment, and like you said, time feels so different here because it's just you just see what you feel like. Sometimes I love it when I just start with my day empty. I have no plans, but it fills itself up with
Same.
friends, people I run into, people who call me, "Hey, let's go for lunch right now." "Okay, let's go." And boom, you go. So it's very much in the moment. And for my health, it has been so good because I feel so much more energy. I feel so much better because you get to live in your body and listen to your body when you don't feel like it. There's a beautiful example on a Sunday. I was going to meet with a friend for lunch. And I was actually like very lazy in my couch and I didn't feel like it. I was tired. And I said, you know what? I was gonna meet with her. I'm just gonna, I got dressed, I got ready, I was ready to leave the door. And then she sent me a message saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm hanging on the couch and actually I really don't feel like it. Can we just go for dinner instead?" And I saw that message and I was like, yeah, of course we can go for. I mean, it was for me the perfect example of I could have done that. I could have said that to her, but I thought a plan was like gold. I thought I had to. I didn't want to cancel like we do in Belgium. We never want to cancel
No.
plans, right? So that was something she taught me. And I was like, yeah, why not? Just keep it flexible.
So the other evening, I was walking down the street and kind of hungry, kind of not, just enjoying the smells of the good food and the sights and the street life. And near my hotel, a couple of people that work at this restaurant, I don't even know the name of the restaurant, but they're so generous and thoughtful. And they saw me walking to my hotel, and they somehow figured that I was hungry, and the lady grabbed me by the arm, and the gentleman was like, and they were genuinely perturbed and worried that I was hungry and I was going to be going back to my hotel without eating. And so they stopped me, and I was like, well, just give me 5 minutes. I just need to put something in my hotel. They're like, no, the restaurant's going to close. Like, you need to come on. And in the US, I would have just said, whatever, I'll just go upstairs. And I started to do that too. And then like, I realized, wait a second, I'm not in America. This is something I should do. This is spontaneous, but I'm hungry. The food's delicious at this restaurant, and I know I'm going to have a good meal. And I know that they're genuinely like concerned for me, and feeling that love. I'm so glad I took them up on it, because the owner of the restaurant's really kind, and everybody there is just really, really nice and really sweet. And um, it kind of reminded me, and we talk about health, and we're going to talk more about health, because Maya is a health coach, somebody that if you're looking to improve your health, your lifestyle, your way of living and being, then she's definitely somebody that you want to reach out to. But it made me realize, wow, in this instance, I'm neglecting my body for whatever reason. I need to eat. I hadn't eaten much in a while, and it's really a good thing for me to be able to not be trapped in my mind, because I was thinking about, okay, I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to start working again, and working on editing or organizing meetings with people, or programming or doing something. Yeah. And this is something I do all the time in the US, or I got in the habit of doing in the US, is I just eat later. I'll just eat later. And what ends up happening is you get right up to the last minute, and then you're like, okay, I'll order a pizza. And pizza is delicious, but it's not what we need to be having. No, definitely not. And that's something else that we can talk about as well. But kind of a random tangent, and then I want to get into health and music. But how did what do you think about the food here?
Yeah. Well, actually, I love the food here.
Yeah.
No, it's so many different tastes, so many different options. I do think they combine a lot of carbs,
Yes.
because you always have your mountain of rice with your potatoes, and then with your beans, and then with your, so even your pasta will have potato in it or whatever, or they always combine two kinds of carbs, and I'm not really used to that. I mean, or grains.
Yeah.
But I love the food here, absolutely. You can just, what I love are those menus, right, at noon.
Yeah.
I don't even cook at home anymore. I love cooking, but if you have the option to just go somewhere, share a meal with lovely people, and have your soup and your main dish and your drink for only $2, $3.
$2 to $3, you have a fantastic meal here.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. And I always go to a vegan corner here, because I love eating vegan here, because you get just so much more vegetables, and the nutrition, the value of it is just way higher. And always the same people go to that same corner at the market. And so I could choose to cook at home and eat by myself. Or I could go there, spend $2, and have feel like I'm sharing a meal with family.
And that's something I want to point out to viewers as well. I know a lot of people cook out of economic necessity, whether they're in the US or they're in Belgium. But often in some of the countries that I've enjoyed traveling in, you're actually not going to save money by cooking at home. When it comes to purchasing the ingredients, when it comes to purchasing your oils or your spices, these kinds of things, the cost is often comparable, in some cases more expensive than where you're from. And so it often makes financial sense to be more willing to try some of these local restaurants. I know some people, they're maybe a bit unsure. They're used to American food, but actually the food here is very, very good, and it's also very, very economical. I will say that Maya does have a point that sometimes you get French fries, rice, beans, and another starch. And so sometimes for me, I just ignore one or two of the starches, but they're not bothered by that. I haven't encountered resistance to my food preferences here. I particularly love it because the food here is very flavorful. You get a lot of different ingredients because there's over 300 microclimates here in Peru. And so you have ingredients coming from all of these different altitudes, from the ocean, from the mountains. It's mind-blowing. It's one of those rare places that I call the food underrated, because I think that the food here is incredible and that you'll be served really well by trying a lot of the local dishes. Certainly, not all of them are for everyone. I wanted to ask. You mentioned the vegan restaurant or marketing or however you want to describe it is often with desserts. They often want to talk about vegan desserts, and I love desserts just as much as everyone, but you can't eat desserts like regular food if that makes any sense. And so that's something that's really wonderful about here is that if you are vegan or you're vegetarian, you're not going to feel like limited like you might in many parts of the US. You have this huge variety. Um, so when it comes to health coaching, I kind of wanted to branch out to that, and then I wanted to finish on singing because that's just such a uplifting and positive topic. I know some people are maybe concerned about their health, but I think that everybody loves music. So when it comes to health, uh, could you talk a little bit about some of the healthier, perhaps lifestyle changes or lifestyle preferences? How are you able to live healthier in Peru than say in Belgium?
Yeah, for starters, when we talk about food, right? I feel like, you know, the food here, I don't even go to the supermarket. What I eat here is completely whole foods. And I know you in the US, you have like the whole whole foods movement and
Yeah.
everyone's crazy about that. But here it's just you go to the market and that's it. And you buy everything you need there. And I never go to a supermarket. So that's one thing that my belly is definitely happier here than in Belgium in that sense. Because I feel like in Belgium, I sometimes had these random belly aches and I didn't know why. And in the end, that stopped when I got to Peru because I just feel like it was from all these chemicals and preservatives and
Notice
everything
my
they.
pain is a lot lower here.
Yeah, yeah,
Aches and pains are a lot lower.
exactly. Aches are so much lower. And then I think what helps me a lot as well is the altitude. Exactly. It's
Really?
the dry air, because Belgium is quite humid, and when you have humid air, there are more bacteria and chemicals and things flying around in the air that you absorb. But then here, the dry air is really just more pure. There's less. Actually, when there's a cold going around, it's harder for bacteria to travel in this dry air. So it's kind of you inhale less of the toxins from the air. So that's what helps me a lot as well. And then let's see what else. Salsa dancing. So when the clubs were still open, there was free salsa classes every night from 9 to 11, and that was my free sports. So I started dancing salsa, and there's a lot of physical movement is just sometimes I don't even actively do sports, but just the walking at this altitude, going up the stairs, going salsa dancing, everything you do is kind of a physical effort. So you're active anyway. You have a very active lifestyle here.
So I want to kind of add to that, and I definitely agree with that. In the U.S., I was very much car dependent. Would you say that in Belgium you were car dependent, or would another word? What's a better, different way to put it? Would you say you were dependent on alternate means of transportation as opposed to walking?
Well, in Belgium, we use a bicycle a lot, so
Okay,
that's our
okay. So
advantage.
that's a
Yeah,
good
that's a
thing.
good
Yeah.
thing. So we go by bike there a lot, or walking not so much, but yeah, many things we do by train or car when we go to other cities. Yeah, but here I feel like I do everything walking, literally. When you live close to the city center, I don't even have to take a bus or a taxi, anything. I just walk everything. Because everything, the other side of the city is like 2 kilometers
Yeah,
away,
yeah.
it's just really close by. So you walk for what, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you're there. So it's super easy.
That's something else I want to point out. I know some of my viewers say live in New York City, some live in San Francisco area, but typically in the U.S., if you're not one of those places, you are very much car reliant. You are, at least when I lived in the Midwest, I would get in the car to get groceries. I would get in the car to get food. I would get in the car to go to classes. I would get in the car to do just about everything. And you do feel kind of like a slog because you're looking at this big hunk of metal and you're like, okay, I've got to maneuver this thing in a safe way from point A to point B and do so with hundreds of other people trying to do the same thing. And you feel very overwhelmed and you feel stressed. I personally don't care for driving at all. If I don't have to drive ever again in my life, I'm thrilled with it. But that's something that I can have that lifestyle here. I can walk to do laundry. I can walk to uh, have dinner. I can walk to go to the pharmacy. I can walk to meet up with friends. Like, regardless of where you're at in Cusco, one thing that's wonderful is you're probably not more than, say, a half hour away from where you
Yeah.
need to get.
And I feel like, here I feel I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Belgium when you want to go somewhere and when you take your car, you need to calculate because you want to know where you can park, etc. When you take a train, you need to look up the timetable, buses as well. So you need to kind of do your research before to know how to get somewhere or use Google Maps to see how can I get there,
Yeah.
And then here that mental space is just completely freed up because you don't need to calculate or think about it. You
No.
just go to the street, you just stop a taxi, or the buses, even, they don't have timetables, they just pass by every minute. So there's nothing that you need to prepare to get somewhere. You either walk, or you just go to the street and stop a random taxi, or you just take a bus. All these buses go everywhere all the time. So it's so flexible, transportation as well.
And I want to add to that. I'm really glad that Maya mentioned that. Whenever I thought about going to Sacred Valley or Pisac, I started doing all this research online. How am I going to get there? Where am I going to start? What kind of bags do I need to have with me? How much is it going to cost? And then I walk a couple of blocks from where I'm living, and there's vans, sprinter vans, going back and forth every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. It's just there's such a large tourist infrastructure here that you may feel like, oh well, this stuff is for tourists, but it's for long people who live here long term as well. Because I imagine uh, that you don't. One of the advantages, as far as fiscal advantages of staying here, is you don't have to buy a car. You don't have to own a car. You don't have to take it to get maintenance. You don't have to do the oil changes, tire rotations. All this is extremely expensive. It definitely makes my life in the US much less economically efficient because I'm having to deal with the upkeep of something that I don't really use all that much because most of my life is working and spending time with friends, and really really wonderful. And I'm glad that you mentioned the health aspects of getting in all this extra walking. That it's not you're not consciously deciding I'm going for a walk. It's I'll just walk down there and do this, and I'll just walk over here, and everything's done. I mean, most of what I need is within a 3 to 5 block radius of my hotel in Cusco, whether it be the gym, the pharmacy, the 10, 20 different restaurants. It's just so convenient. So talking more about health is how are you able to adjust to the altitude? About how long did you feel like it took for you to adjust?
Yeah, for me it took, well, the first time, um, it did take me about a week, let's say, because you feel your body just, even when you turn around in bed, you feel like,
Yes, yes.
that's what happens at this altitude. Funny enough, this time, I was in Belgium for a year and a half. Now I came back in December and I actually had a headache because, well, I think I went to a restaurant, but a friend took me even higher than Cusco somewhere. So my body was like, whoa, and I got a headache. But what you can do there, and what many tourists do, is they just go to the Sacred Valley in one of those cars that you
Oh, yeah,
mentioned. They
yeah.
just go every 5 minutes. It's 1 hour from here, and it's way lower. And that's where you just stay there for one night, 2 nights. The moment I got there, my headache was gone. So that often helps to just stay there for one night, 2 nights, and then go back to Cusco. And then kind of take it easy in the beginning because sometimes some tourists want to go to Machu Picchu right away and do a 5 day hike and, do everything they could do in 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time. But it's good to just the first week, there's so much to see within Cusco city itself, to just get familiar with the city, walk around the lovely streets in the city center, buy some souvenirs, whatever, go to the amazing restaurants they have here, and just listen to your body, let your body adapt and listen to what it really needs.
I'm glad you mentioned that because when I first came here, well, fortunately, I came from Bogota, so Bogota is at 8,600 feet, so a little bit less adjustment to the 12K feet. But very much, I felt like I need to hurry because I'm in Cusco. Oh my gosh, I'm in Cusco. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm staying here for at least a few weeks. Now I'm going on a month here. I don't have to rush to see all these things, but there is a lot of that going on here as far as different kinds of sites. I know a lot of people associate Cusco with Machu Picchu, with Ollantaytambo, and the wonder of the world that exists here. But uh, it's not just the Machu Picchu site that's so wonderful to see here. You have museums, you have art galleries, you have beautiful music here that people share, restaurants. It's like it feels like to me the city is like some kind of artistic exhibit or something that's alive, and you really feel like a participant in many ways in this artistic exhibit. But yeah, it's just really cool to talk about health because I think that that's going to be a growing concern in our society as the world population ages, as people perhaps start to be more in touch with their bodies and realizing, hey, I'm aching, or hey, I'm sore, or maybe mentally I'm feeling drained. Um, that's the next topic I want to get talk about